Don't look now, but it's a whole new world of weed out there. Pot is flower, it's Bruce Banner and Blue Dream. You've got bongs and dabs, resin and shatter, vaping and edibles, new terms, new strains, and new ways to use cannabis sativa, the plant. Some just made with CBD, and hemp has minimal THC. There's sativa and indica strains, and 100 chemicals, all legal in 10 states for adult use. There's a lot to get to know. Get used to it, folks, because it's legal in the Bay State and it's not going away. Neither is In the Weeds with Jimmy Young next. Revolutionary Clinics is just one of 49 medical cannabis dispensaries in Massachusetts, but there's a reason why it's one of the most popular. It's their patient-first philosophy. All day long, they teach, they educate, they communicate about this complicated plant called cannabis sativa. That's true whether you visit their Cambridge location in Fresh Pond at 110 Fawcett Street or at 67 Broadway in Somerville. Revolutionary Clinics, where the patient comes first. Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, and we have a very special in-studio guest for you. We'll get to Rocco Petrilli in just a moment, but remember, this podcast is available on a variety of distribution channels, including our flagship CLNS Media, as well as the C-Suite Radio Network, and of course you can find a video record of this on theweedtube.com, and of course, Pro Cannabis Media as well. I want to welcome in Rocco Petrilli, the chairman of the advisory board of the NCRMA, which is, if you look at your screens, you will see it is indeed the National Cannabis Risk Management Association. Rocco, thank you so much for traveling up here from Pittsburgh, I believe is where you originated today. Anyway.
Actually originated today from my home in State College, BA.
Oh, State College.
Home of the Penn State Nittany Lions.
The Nittany Lions. In fact, I think there's a promise of a visit at some point,
yeah,
right?
I mean, and we need to do a live stream from there.
Oh, my goodness
We
gracious.
need to agree to that today. But, Jimmy, I got to tell you, to show you
yes,
and to prove to everybody
that
anything's possible.
Yes.
20-some years ago, 30-some years ago, me sitting, voracious sports fan, impressionable adolescent, listening to Jimmy Young up in New England.
Oh, my God.
And here we are 30 years later, and I'm sitting in a studio talking cannabis with you.
Yeah, that is amazing. Okay, on a lot of fronts. The fact that we both lasted this long, right?
Yeah.
And the
fact this is no accident.
I know. Rocco, you're going to be great. I love it. Appreciate that nice compliment. Tell us a little bit about your life story in a encapsulated form, which, by the way, when I tell my life story, usually people set their clocks ahead. Anyway.
Well, unfortunately, you're limiting me to an hour today.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm going to have to encapsulate quite a bit.
Tell us about your bio.
I've lived a fortunate life. I'm in very, very strong Italian family.
Whoa, wait a second. You're Italian?
Yeah, how about that? I told you this is no accident.
I'm shocked to hear that. I'm shocked. I'm sorry, I can't.
Solid family upbringing. Very fortunate. I mean, outside of the regular and typical maladies that we deal with, I mean, very, very little sadness in my life. Found a great mate, been with me 38 years plus, 2 great children, and a background that people might find surprising, but I talk about my alma mater, Penn State.
Yeah.
I graduated with a degree in chemical engineering back in 1982.
How was that organic chemistry class?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, it was really the physical chemistry class. And I can say this with affection because we have a son now who's a medical doctor.
Yeah.
But we always used to say, in physical chemistry, how can you tell the pre-meds? And the pre-meds were always the one that we're studying just before the exam. We had already given up by then.
That I get. My fellow classmates who had to take organic, I felt so bad for them. But
I loved it. I mean, it's like anything. If you find the sweet spot. But
and science isn't everything.
True.
Right.
True. As we'll talk about maybe
yes,
a
we
bit
will.
later. But,
yes, we will.
Once I got focused on engineering, it was always chemical engineering. So,
gotcha.
And sort of with some background also in materials morphed into the materials section of chemical engineering, and spent about 30 years in various capacities, from technical to CEO of automotive component manufacturing companies.
Wow, there you go. As a CEO, what's the most important lesson you can share and talk to us about? What makes a good CEO in your mind?
Well, I mean, there are a number of things that make a good CEO, and something I always prided myself on, and the tie is you have to be good with your people. You have to be a leader, and you have to be a leader that people emulate, not because they have to, but because they want to. And you know, I'm a veteran of 14 startups. And you know, I talk about and how I've motivated people all along the way is giving them an opportunity to be a part of a legacy, and create things that haven't been there before.
Right.
But as far as responsibility, which is the tie to, I assume one of your questions is going to be, how did you get from automotive components to cannabis? But
by the way, if you feel like asking yourself questions, I'll just take a break. I got no problem with that.
but the number one responsibility of a CEO is to protect his company and to mitigate risks surrounding his company.
Good segue into the next slide, shall we? This is the NCRMA vision statement. And rather than read it verbatim, let's talk a little bit about what is risk management.
Risk management, you know, the formal definition or the Wikipedia definition, and is, you know, it is a practice, or it is a process that organizations use or individuals use to properly understand and mitigate and control any of the risks that surround their business. I mean, you know the common terms, right? Derailers, showstoppers. Those are things that risk management practices and tools help you keep in check and help you keep at bay. Sometimes eliminating them, but more times controlling them.
And when you talk about risk management, few industries carry more risks than cannabis, because when you mention the name or that you are in that business, everybody has an opinion, whether it is based on fact or not. They all have opinions about the fact that cannabis and the green wave is moving closer and closer to decriminalization, at least at the federal level, if not legalization over a 5-year or 6-year period. Cannabis people in that business know they're taking a risk by getting into that business. So it's inherent in this, yes?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, as you would expect, you and I are going to walk back and forth here across this line and editorialize from time to time. But a bit of an editorial is that perceived risk or danger is really unfair. And, I mean, I think we all know that.
Yes.
And, you know, particularly those of us who have decided, you know, like you, after a rather diverse career that you spent in another place, you know, decided to put our efforts into it. I mean, my personal attraction was and has always been medical cannabis because of, you know, the benefits.
Right.
That you know, we now need to properly prop up and then create the clinical data to prove that the benefits that people claim are there.
Right.
But you know, outside of that, it's a farm product.
Right.
And you know, dating back to our forefathers and our ancestors, I mean, it was a farm product that was cultivated and used for certain purposes.
And on a past News Dabs, I actually talked about the earliest examples of cannabis use was found recently in China in a burial ground. 2,500 years ago, they found burnt residue of cannabis in this burial ground. And that is the oldest document.
And 3 empty bags of M&M's.
I don't think they made M&Ms back then. I'm going on a list. Anyway, I just find that fascinating. That here's a product that's been used for thousands of years, and it's taken us this long as a modern society to recognize the medicinal qualities of it. And there's also some adult use and recreational qualities too, if it's used responsibly.
Sure, as you know, whether you can debate or argue the point whether we as a country needed another vice, but at the same time, we're a country built on opportunity, rights, and freedoms, and that's all that's being exercised here.
Right.
Properly controlled and used in moderation. There's a lot of things that can fly in our country without becoming a detriment.
That's right. And again, it's an adult use over 21-year-old product, and it's designed that way because there are certain responsibilities whenever you put any kind of a substance into your system, whether that is alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, or cannabis.
So to talk a little bit of how we built that bridge between cannabis, risk management, and deciding, as you asked earlier, what the real origin of the need for a risk management association, and I stepped into this in about halfway through the second quarter.
Okay.
So there was a team of people, businessmen and women in the Western Pennsylvania area, and elsewhere, but concentrated there, who had been thinking about a place in cannabis, and given their toolboxes, and where sort of a combination of their cognitive abilities and desires, but also their behavioral drives. They decided, what would be the best place for us to create an entry point, given our capabilities and our interest into the cannabis market. And I mean, there was some insurance background involved. There was some finance background involved. There was some banking background involved. But the real idea became, independent of anything. The biggest thing that will correctly or properly launch, and I mean, I've used this practice too in the introduction of disruptive technologies into businesses that produced automotive components. What you really need to do is define and understand and learn how to bring your product to market while mitigating and controlling the risk.
There you go.
So in this case, it was a very prominent forethought that what we really needed to do, and I'm saying we now because this is a team that, again, I ultimately ran out of field halfway through the second quarter. What we really needed to do is get formal and focused risk management processes and products out to the cannabis market.
Right.
Because only if, in the evolution of this market, only if those risks were controlled, did the industry really stand a chance of being as successful as some of the projections that we're now hearing.
Right. Billions, if not trillions. And I think it's fascinating just to keep an eye on all this. One of the things you mentioned was banks. As you know, the Safe Banking Act is on the floor of the House, or at least in a committee that's approved and all this. I mean, there's so many levels in politics in Washington, D.C. It's fascinating. But the Safe Banking Act will open up the cannabis industry to the banking industry. How important is that to this industry? Because right now, it's all cash.
It's vital. But and again, this is more of a personal viewpoint. But I learned to really never overly concern myself with things that I realized, or at least ascertained in my own mind, had to happen. This has to happen.
Right.
These cash transactions cannot continue. I know just from the role of risk management, the additional stress that it puts on, for example, putting together a portfolio of risk management tools for a dispensary,
Right.
when you're dealing with all this cash.
Right.
And it's unnecessary. It really is. Again, people need to get together, hear me say put the politics aside, but we can't put the politics aside today in our society.
No, we cannot.
On the simplest of concepts that are 100% in the genuine best interest of the United States and its citizens. So
Right.
what's that mean? It's going to take a while, but again, in my opinion, it's going to happen. So from the NCRMA standpoint, although we have advocacy that focuses on things like that, we're really only equipped to deal with things that have become permanent.
Gotcha.
It's not speculative. It's not what happens when we get the Safe Banking Act. It's, for example, today, we'll talk about service partners a bit later. We have a number of service partners that provide various definitions of risk management tools and processes to our membership. One is Pineapple Payments.
Yeah.
And they're there for our members to use to help find payment solutions or payment processing solutions in areas where they deem it necessary.
Right. All right, Rocco. Well, we know what your vision statement is. Let's check out what your mission statement is. And it's relatively simple: making our members better consumers of insurance. You try to make a mission statement simple, right?
Exactly.
And that's about as simple as it gets.
When it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. Another example
Yes.
of a simple mission statement. But it explains it. I mean, in our case,
Yeah.
everything needs a certain focus to be effective. I mean, certainly the concept of risk management is very, very broad. And had we tried or attempted to represent all of the risk that exists in all of the cannabis industry, we wouldn't have been successful. So we drew our mission down to that of insurance. Because in our early days, when we were starting to recruit and accrue membership, the early feedback that we got is that finding quality insurance coverage was a severe detriment to the various members, new members or original members of the NCRMA in starting and operating their businesses. And the deeper that we got into that, it became very clear that the way that our passion was, how can we influence this positively and to the betterment of the people? And both members and outside consumers alike. And we did that by focusing on what we found was one of the biggest deficiencies in the market, and that was commercial insurance coverages.
There you go.
So by providing these risk management tools that help our members manage their risk, eliminate the uncertainty, and keep the bad things from happening, we make our members better consumers of insurance.
Gotcha. You're watching In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. This is a podcast that is carried on the Pro Cannabis Media Group and procannabismedia.com. And we are also distributed on iTunes. We're also distributed on a variety of other podcast aggregation networks, including C-Suite Network and the clnsmedia.com website as well. When you talk about risk in this business, in the cannabis business, there are those businesses who grow the stuff and dispense the stuff because that's part of the deal, and they touch the product specifically. But there's a whole bunch of other people in the cannabis space that are the ancillary ones, the equipment manufacturers and the labelers and the packagers. They too sometimes have problems getting themselves insurance or even banking because people know that they're working with people in the cannabis space. Obviously, I'm guessing your members go all over the place here?
Yeah, they do. Although, the primary challenge come from the people who are directly involved in the, let's call it vertical processing
Right.
through to dispensary of the cannabis.
From seed
to
sale.
distribution.
Yes.
Seed to distribution
Seed to
is
distribution,
what we say.
which follows the sale.
Right.
So that makes sense too, because there's a risk in that.
But you know, because many of the ancillary, like the processing equipment manufacturers, I mean, most of them, and a salud for the way that they've done this, but they have tailored an existing product to answer the bell in cannabis processing. For example, you know, lighting, solvent, extraction, pressurized solvent, pressing. You know, all of those pieces of manufacturing equipment previously existed before legalized cannabis, and were used to do something else. I mean, solventless and solvent extraction has been around. You know, I think they did it at Spacely or at Fred Flintstone's place of employment. I was going to say Mr. Spacely, but I was on the other.
You have to go to see the Brotherhood of the Buffaloes now. We're going to have a Fred Flintstone
I'm just
reference.
trying to make the point, Jimmy. It's been around for a long time. So what these companies have really masterfully done is they've just taken an existing product. They've co-branded it into the cannabis space, but it really doesn't directly impact that company because of the dual use of the equipment.
Right. I get you. I think it's time that we move on to the differentiators of the NCR-MA. And obviously one of the first one is you're unique. And by the way, anybody who knows Rocco knows he's unique. By the way, people say that about me too sometimes. Anyway, they also call me weird, but that's another story. Talk to us a little bit about talk to me about your membership group and what differentiates. How is membership a benefit?
Okay, so we get into the risk management side, and the further investigations that we did in the focus of our risk management was the ultimate insurance policy and insurance coverage. We found that and felt that our members would truly benefit from us adding some expertise to our leadership staff, and making certain determinations, as well as trying to influence the types and quality of insurance product that's in the marketplace. So at this point, we call ourselves the only focused risk management / insurance member association in the country, which I'm very confident that we are. We have members. We supply them risk management tools through our membership. That is growing. I mean, that particular, what I'll call vertical supply is in its infancy, but it's growing. But we have a number, as we'll talk about, very capable service partners who are standing ready to deliver these tools to the membership. But in addition, we've taken a deep dive into the insurance industry, and we've vetted every insurance product that's in the marketplace, and are now putting ourselves in a position where we can recommend to our members who come to us for advice where they should go for insurance, and also taking it to a point where we're actually sanctioning or approving certain product lines, and then working with the people that are in the industry to come up with our own list, for example, of appointed brokers. So not only are we recommending to our members, we think this insurance package fits your need best, but we're also giving them a list of approved brokers who we're recommending that they should work with so that they get the proper service and consideration. Because it wasn't only the quality of the product. I mean, many of the things that we heard were the insurance coverage was very expensive in terms of, dollar premium per dollar coverage. Well, of course it was, because there is zero actuarial information out there to support the development of the early rates. So, people that are setting those rates are protecting themselves. The other thing that we heard resoundingly is that much more exclusion than inclusion. So people paid for the insurance policies, but after filtering through that funnel of exclusions that was all part of the policy wordings and sometimes the small print, when it came right down to it, they had very little coverage at all. And many people told us that the only reason they were buying these insurance policies is because they needed to check the box.
They said that we have the insurance coverage, which is part of the regulation.
But it's certainly not protecting them. So
Right.
again, our viewpoint was we need to get out there and influence the early loss history of these companies, because that's the only way really the insurance market is going to come around. It's like gas prices. I mean, if there's an early bad experience in cannabis from a claims history or claims management standpoint that pushes those premiums up, it's going to take a long time for those premiums to come back down. So we're really focused on the first couple of years, particularly in these adult use states, of the insurance claim history, and are very strongly suggesting to our members, hey, you got to get involved and you got to control your claims history, because ultimately your control now is going to benefit you in terms of higher value premiums and coverages that you'll be able to secure in the future.
As you know, and you kind of alluded to this fact, Massachusetts, first East Coast state to legalize adult use cannabis. The more mature markets in this space are out west in California and Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and of course Colorado as well. How many members do you have, and does the mature market skew towards a membership? Or I know you see this as an opportunity to grow membership in the East, but is this where you're finding most of your members are in those mature markets?
Yeah, our common thread of membership started in the West and stays in the West. But again, we're seeing a growing interest as these states are continuing to legalize, particularly on the adult use side. We also have a genuine interest from the medical side, which of course is much broader. 30 plus states are legalized medically, and it's an insurance challenge a bit, but we enjoy it. Is that a lot of these medical facilities are vertical grows, so they're seed to distribution, at least seed to packaging under one roof, and then typically the dispensary exists somewhere else. So that's a different risk management challenge than going from supply point to supply point, starting with grow and cultivation and ending with dispensary.
There's so many steps in this process, and with a chemistry background, you understand.
I love it. I love it.
I talked to one of the chemists at Alternative Compassion Service. I'll certainly give them ACS a plug down in Bridgewater. Even though we do love the Revolutionary Clinics too, which is our original sponsor. I don't want to, play favorites. That's very important. The whole chemistry, there's so many chemicals that they're still discovering in this cannabis sativa plant. It's so funny because when you think about the usage of it over thousands of years, but now you're applying modern research and science to a product that's been around for thousands of years, so you're really able to drill down. Like, they didn't have the ability to drill down into the molecules 80 years ago when it first became prohibited. They just didn't. Now they do, and they're discovering new molecules every day.
Yeah, I mean, so much of medicine, pre where we are today technologically has been about the result, the impact.
Right.
But I mean, and that's one of the things that I thoroughly enjoy, because just the types of people and the types of missions that I'm exposed to. For example, I'm working, with a PhD. A medical doctor, an MD in psychiatric medicine, and his design is to, work with a producer of medical cannabis to actually alter the genetics of the cannabinoid, so that the receptors in the altered molecule match up with the receptors in the brain that control addiction, and therefore displacing the much dirtier and much more painful approach of methadone and Suboxone when it comes to treating opioid addiction. So just some wonderful medical opportunities out there.
It really is. You mentioned opioids, and we all know in this country where we have a crisis. And it is an amazing thing how many, certainly veterans who suffer from PTSD, were given opioids because that was the Western medicine way of like, oh, you've got pain here, let me write you a script for Vicodin or Percocet or whatever it happens to be.
By the handful.
By the handful. And these guys will go out and before they know it, they're addicted and, you know, they have to come off it. And here it is, cannabis is now becoming more accepted as an alternative to using opioids. And in fact, I know you're a football guy, Rocco. You know, I know that. Even in the NFL, some former players are now coming out. Chris Long, who played for both the Patriots and the Eagles. He's the son of Howie.
Played for the Raiders.
And he played for the Raiders.
You know, Jimmy, you know, I'm a Raider guy too.
Well, I'm certainly not going to mess with you anyway, but there's another reason why not. Point being is now that these guys have retired, they feel very comfortable basically admitting, hey, we've been using it forever. And, you know, because we know when they're going to test it. You know, the NFL Players Association says, okay, just so you know, August 5th, they're going to do the cannabis test. So make sure you're clean through July so you won't get tested positive.
Sure.
It's almost been a joke amongst those players. And I know this is one of the things, this is not my opinion. This is a fact of what some of the players have talked about. And now I know that the football NFL is looking into alternative pain management therapies, which is wink, wink, CBD and cannabis. This acceptance by a major sports entity has to help the movement across the country for acceptance. Yes?
It certainly helps. Again, you know, understanding the little bit about medicine that my MD son has taught me. Mm-hmm. You know, it's really all about the creation of the clinical data.
Right.
Once we have the clinical data, then the doctors will not only be free to prescribe, but also willing to, because they'll believe in, you know, at this point, they take an oath. Right. You know, they can't steer you towards medical cannabis because they think it might work. Right. They need the clinical data that proves that it.
Right, and therein lies the rub and the catch-22 here. Anecdotally, there's thousands of stories. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, "Let me tell you, cannabis has saved my life," or "Cannabis has changed my life," and for the better. And if it helps somebody get off opioids, how can you not encourage that, whether you're a doctor writing the script or not?
And, you know, you mentioned PSTD. Mm-hmm. That's important. And, you know, it's more than coincidence that Willie Nelson at 86 years old continues to tour the country with his sister, mm-hmm. Bobby, on the piano at 88, and Paul English on the drums sometimes yet at 90.
Well, you know what they say about 90? It's the old 80, or is it the new 80, or is it 70? We keep getting younger and younger, and our population keeps getting older and older.
Yeah.
By the way, it's that emerging baby boomer market that all that cannabis dough that's being invested is waiting to emerge. We know we've got 11 states that have it legalized now. And more coming on board with Illinois. I threw Maine in there as well. So it's just going to get to be a bigger and bigger market, and there's going to be more and more need for education.
Well, I mean, even if, you know, again, Attorney General Barr made a prominent statement mm-hmm. A couple of months ago, mm-hmm. And I'll paraphrase it, mm-hmm. but I did read it and actually use it in one of the business prospectuses that I was putting together in the interest of the NCRMA and what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he said, personally, I'm against this, but, you know, we're not going to stop the train.
Right.
You know, stopping the momentum is now untenable.
Right.
And so we have to figure out, you know, how to best manage it.
Right.
And the only thing that scares me is anytime somebody in government
Yeah.
talks about managing things.
Yes. Why isn't it? We could sit here and we laugh about it. If we all know that education drives the bus and science and research is really moving the wave forward here, why aren't our legislators, both on the state and at the federal level, learning more about this product?
Jimmy, we live our life through our paradigms.
Thanks. That was very deep.
Paradigms take a long time to break, and right now, my generation,
Yep.
okay, and 20 years above and 15 years below, we're stuck in the weed paradigm. We think of Cheech and Chong.
Right. And now you're in the weeds with Jimmy Young.
With Jimmy Young.
So there you go. You've got a little over 2,000 members, I see, up there. Is that true?
Yeah, we're proud of, it's
a pretty good start, by the way.
We turned the spigot on hard. I mean, we have spent a lot of money, time, and energy on marketing and getting our message out.
Yeah.
That 2,000 member list is it's starting to take somewhat of an exponential shape, or a hockey stick.
Yeah, good.
More appropriate probably for this discussion.
Absolutely.
Too bad there's no Stanley Cup for second place, but I had to get
No, you can get it.
I'm a St. Louis guy. I mean, not a Blues guy, but a St. Louis guy.
I understand. And the Boston area still is the greatest sports town in America. Let's face it. That's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, there's no sense wasting our listeners'
I
valuable time on an argument that I can't win.
That's right. Enough said. Let's move on to the membership benefits.
we're seeing a very nice increase in the slope of membership.
Good.
Which means our messaging is becoming more productive and
the
more
market's
fruitful.
getting bigger.
Sure,
Right.
sure. We expect that now. I mean, one of the big issues or events that we're literally days from is we are coming out July 1 with an announcement of our first product recommendation that we've done a lot of due diligence on and actually had an opportunity to exert some influence on. So July 1, for the first time, the NCRMA will come out to its membership and say, hey, we think, particularly where you are, this is the insurance product that you need. And, that type of endorsement is should be pretty effective and pretty important.
Yep.
Because not now, with that, we're really starting to deliver something.
Gotcha.
And now all of this training and these tools that we've been promoting, now using them really starts to make some sense, because they know that using them is going to impact their claims history, which is going to have a positive impact on the evolution of the insurance products that we sanction.
Gotcha. You always bring up that July 1st date, so I know that's an important launching point for your company. You have taken over the ProCannabisMedia.com website, and anybody who's interested in finding out more or even becoming a member of the NCRMA can now go to the ProCannabisMedia.com website, click on your logo, and it flips right back over to you guys. And then your site gets to take over that person. And it's a wonderful thing, that nice little relationship that we've kind of
we have
this
is working out well, and I'm anxious a little bit later in the show to talk about how we're really going to help our members leverage your service.
Oh boy,
to mitigate their risk.
Hey, who are these people on your
staff? Who are these people? Well,
staff?
14 startups. Good people. You know how to find good people. You know how to associate yourself with good people. I canned a quote a number of years ago, because the teams that I was involved in and responsible for had a tendency of doing things that were outside the realm of expectation. And asked one time, what's the secret? And it's very simply, when you make unrealistic expectations of quality people, they normally deliver.
Yeah. And there's nothing worse than over-promising and under-delivering, even in basic communication with humans. And I know that's something that we definitely make sure that we want to over deliver and offer value, and it is something that we will be offering to your membership too. The beautiful thing about what we get to do now is we get to go on the road too. Not everybody has to fly in from outside the Massachusetts area to come into our studio.
Through Philadelphia.
Through Philadelphia.
Which I would wish on no one ever again.
And the worst sports fans in America. Oh, I got another sports analogy in there. Can we talk about Donna?
Yeah.
Donna Capps Evans, your executive director?
Donna Capps Evans. I was, from pretty much our initial startup, wearing the interim executive director hat for the NCRMA, but certainly wasn't my life's mission. Because just look at the comparison of the faces. Right.
That's right.
We want Donna, and Donna is the face of the NCRMA. But she comes to us with 25 years of real insurance experience, and there's no more effective somebody in an executive director role that understands not only the product and its creation, but also the impact of both good products and bad products on the client or consumer. And Donna was a great choice for that. I mean, you've seen more of Donna in the last month than I have.
I just saw her this past weekend, and it was like, hey, I got recognized on the streets of Springfield, Massachusetts. I was like, wait, I know who that is. Hi, Donna, how are you? It was like two ships passing in the night, but I've also sat and talked with her at Sensi Night in Boston, Sensi Magazine, one of our marketing partners, founding members here at Pro Cannabis Media. So I have enjoyed, and she is a bundle of energy.
She is.
And I for some reason, I'm attracted to people that have bundles of energy, because I like to think spending time around them keeps us all young, even if your last name isn't young.
Well, again, philosophically, and one of the things that I continue to do along with this effort is, and another Boston company, but I'm a talent optimization specialist, trained talent optimization specialist with the Predictive Index, which is a Boston company, and actually voted one of the top employers in Boston in 2019. So some of the things that I'm learning there now have a real scientific behavioral basis behind things that have always been intuitive with me. And the biggest one is, and it has to do with everybody on this team, is you can't teach heart.
Right.
And that's paramount to what it takes to be part of a successful startup team like we've assembled at the NCRMA. It's that passion you see in Donna. You see in different shapes and forms with everybody on the squad.
Yeah, and as I learned with another startup, Pro Cannabis Media, it is all about the team. In life, it's really about the family and the team. And in this case, you've got. Tell me a little bit about Brian and Jeff, because we haven't talked too much about them.
Well, Jeff is. First of all, he's become, as have all of these people, but Jeff was first. A dear and close personal friend and confidant. Jeff is an insurance savant. He spent his life in it, and he has a command of insurance and all aspects of insurance that is, at least in my experience, and I'm sure in most people's, would be unparalleled. He was one of the original think tank members, and he's the guy that reached out through a common acquaintance, an attorney friend who's been a friend and business partner of mine for 20 years, a guy by the name of Albert Lee. Jeff said to Albert, Albert, I have the insurance knowledge. We're gaining the cannabis knowledge. I need I have the organization. I have a bit of the structure. What I really need is somebody that knows how to get something done. And Albert said,
Call Rocco.
I know just the guy. And it's been, it's like Bogart and Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca. You know, it was the beginning of a wonderful relationship.
I do love that line in that scene. And by the way, we are old enough to both remember it, and I'm proud of that.
So Jeff is really the what I'm going to call the nuclei of the outfit when it comes to true insurance knowledge, and he's in a little over 16 or 17 months. He's elevated my knowledge of insurance significantly to the point where I can not only wear this hat with the NCRMA, but also with with the insurance advisory concern.
Okay, Brian, talk about Brian.
Brian's again a longtime insurance guy.
Yep.
Again, quality individual.
Yeah.
Is a JD. Has a background in environmental science and environmental litigation. Started up and ran large divisions of large insurance companies, but his mastery skill is underwriting. And you can't get into the business that we're getting into, without an understanding of underwriting.
Right.
And he's leading that charge.
Excellent. And Sandy, I've dealt with because she handles the logos and the marketings, and I'm more in touch with her, I think, than I am with you.
Yeah.
And she's been great. And
Sandy's great. I mean, she's stepped in and taken on a pretty significant about responsibility from a management standpoint, where she didn't have that opportunity before. And just one of those people that just is tireless. I mean, it's always nice to have someone to bounce something off on when I'm putting things to print at 11 o'clock at night. And I mean, she's right there with me. So.
Yeah, there is that culture of being part of a startup too. That when you need a decision made, you have to consult the inner circle.
Yeah.
And rounding out the inner circle, John Craig.
John Craig's Chief Information Officer. Again, information and information technology, today it's like second base, right? You don't play the game without it.
Right, exactly.
And John brings that core strength to us, and promises even to do more for us in the future when it comes to when we ultimately get closer to these product offerings and closer to these carriers. To be able to tie NCRMA members right into the brokers, and moving that information around with the nimbleness and agility and speed you need to beat other people to the punch when you're putting together these types of arrangements. So very valuable guy.
Awesome. Well, that is the team. Now let's talk a little bit about the partners, because you already mentioned Pineapple Payments.
Pineapple Payments is there. Protect All Solutions is. Their business is primarily safety and loss control. So, of course, they're a big player because they're responsible not only to do the pre-risk management assessments and help the particular member to really understand what their risks are. Because, people don't wake up thinking about risk management.
Right.
So, to go into whether it's a dispensary or something upstream, and walk the floor and talk to the people and look at the operation, and just they identify those risks, and then they put together a physical plan to mitigate those risks, as well as do a lot of training.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to quickly touch on a couple of these other partners?
Fifth Wall is about cybersecurity, which is
say no more.
Big, say no more.
That's right. I've had my identity bruised.
Yeah.
Can you imagine someone would actually want my identity in the first place?
Somebody stole my identity. 2 days later, they gave it back.
Tucker
Ahrensberg is a law firm.
Yep.
That's focused headquartered in Pittsburgh. They have a cannabis arm. They also belong to a nationwide association. Again, all of this is legislated at the state level. So while they can directly help, some of our members in Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia, but they can also, with hitting a button or picking up a phone, give one of our members in Colorado a quick recommendation on legal counsel,
right?
Depending on the particular legal need
Right.
or representation need that would have arisen.
Right. It's so funny. I'm sure being in the cannabis space, we're in the cannabis space, people come up to you and go, hey, you got a good stock tip for me? You got a good stock tip for me? And I say this all the time. I said, your best investment is in a law firm.
Yeah.
Because they're going to do well no matter what, and these laws are new, and they're going to interpret them, and every state is different, and they're always changing, and it is a challenge.
How many law firms you've ever seen go out of business?
Correct. Exactly right. Exactly. Lastly, is it Tetra?
Well, we've got Indiva.
I forgot Indiva.
Yeah, we've
sorry.
got Indiva. We met
Not Indica, it's Indiva.
No, we met Indiva at MJ BizCon in Las Vegas in 2018, and they are a tax and accounting firm that has taken a big swipe of their structure and resources and focused it through cannabis. So again, our members have somebody, and the interesting thing is, this is all risk. Maybe a lot of this, in fact, some of the newer things I want to talk about don't fall, into what I'll call the classical definition of risk management. But this is all helping our members
Gotcha.
keep things under control. And what a bigger aspect of control out there than tax and accounting.
Oh, yes. Because
They don't call them controllers for nothing.
Right, and death and taxes, no matter what you're
Yeah.
in, right? Final impact.
Tetra works on the front end for us. Tetra is owned by a Pittsburgh, now Charleston, South Carolina attorney by the name of Emily Seelman. Emily's another hookup that we made when we were at MJ Biz. But she works on the front end, so she does the research and licensing and application and permitting preparation. Because so much of a quick entry and an entry that comes without a lot of risk is making sure that you navigate that permitting process with expert guidance, and that's what Tetra supplies.
Right, terrific. Well, that is.
And there's one more.
Oh, is there really?
That didn't make the list.
Didn't make the.
Because it's so new.
It's so new. Thank you very much. As we look forward to a partnership, longtime partnership with the NCRMA.
Looking forward with it as well. And people may ask, how does Pro Cannabis Media provide risk management services? Well, it's twofold. I'll take one, you take one.
Okay, go ahead. You go first.
Okay, I was going to let you go first, but I'll go first.
You go first.
Again, a big part of mitigating risk is doing so with the right and accurate information.
Right.
Now we have a source.
Right. And more importantly, Pro Cannabis Media tells the stories of the cannabis industry through their own words. It's been very frustrating for me, being a longtime member of the media, to see what they're doing here in my local hometown of Boston, Mass. Because every little thing that the industry does wrong, or they have a compliance issue that's so minute, it ends up being the lead story on the news. Now, I understand the importance of driving ratings in commercial television, but I believe there should be more balance in the media. I believe for every negative story that you tell, you should tell a positive story about how cannabis has saved people's lives and how it has changed people's lives, and give it the respect that any other new industry is getting. But why, for some reason, they're still not giving cannabis a chance? I don't know the answer to that, but I do look forward to hanging out with my old friends in the media now that we too are a legit media company.
Yeah, and it has to. Again, we said that we would editorialize from time to time, but the whole persona of the media today has to make you a little bit green when you wake up in the morning, simply because
of the news.
Not only they don't give cannabis a chance, they give nothing a chance.
Yeah, it's been tough. The media has been battered and bruised over the last 10, 15 years, except for one entity. I think we all can agree that the 60 Minutes staff does the best job on television of telling the story no matter what that story is. They are the best storytellers in the business. And kind of a little thrill when I was down at Washington, D.C. For lobby days back in May, I ran into Scott Pelley, and I said to him, I said, Scott, you don't know me, but, this happens to you all the time. I said, when I was in your business for many, many years, I always enjoyed it when someone would come up to me to say, I enjoy your work. And he appreciated that. And I do enjoy his work. So how do we connect to you? We go to your website, ncrma.net. And of course, you've got all those social icons too that we too have. So plenty of ways to get in touch with Rocco Petrilli and his staff.
And keep an eye. I mean, we're in the interest of our membership, we're active. We're active communicators. And not only are we communicating or projecting outwardly, but we're constantly soliciting the input of our membership. And the step that we're taking this week, or next Monday, with the first sanctioning or promotion of an insurance product, is absolutely directed at answering the call of our membership. And we're putting ourselves in a position where that's what we do. We're a member-centric organization. So without our members, we don't exist.
Right. Well, that's the whole point of an association, correct?
Right.
That's it. All right. Well, Rocco, it was fun talking with you. I have a feeling that we will be continuing the conversation about sports over dinner tonight, and I look forward to that, no matter what side of the fence you're on. All right. So for Rocco Petrilli, Steve Helmuth, who's our technical director, our executive producer, Joyce Gerber, I'm your host, Jimmy Young. And again, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Revolutionary Clinics is just one of 49 medical cannabis dispensaries in Massachusetts, but there's a reason why it's one of the most popular. It's their patient-first philosophy. All day long, they teach, they educate, they communicate about this complicated plant called cannabis sativa. That's true whether you visit their Cambridge location in Fresh Pond at 110 Fawcett Street or at 67 Broadway in Somerville. Revolutionary Clinics, where the patient comes first. In the Weeds with Jimmy Young is a video podcast produced by the Pro Cannabis Media Network for the entertainment and education of our audience. All opinions on this show should not be considered medical advice or reflect the opinions of the management of CLNS Media, C-Suite Network, Pro Cannabis Media Group, or its marketing partners.